There are a couple security best practices that you'll want to apply to an application, especially if it's running on a public internet website. As soon as you make your application public, people will find that server and they will run scripts to try to exploit weaknesses in your application. One thing people will try to do is use a cross-site scripting attack against your application. You'll want to use any means possible to prevent these cross-site scripting attacks. Fortunately, ASP.NET has a feature built in called request validation or input validation that will stop most cross-site scripting attacks in their tracks. But there are scenarios where you may want to turn off input validation. You have to be extremely careful when you do this. In an MVC project, you can turn off input validation by using this validate input attribute and giving it a false parameter. Let's flip over into a demo application so I can show you what a cross-site scripting attack would look like. Let's say we've given the user the ability to create a to-do list. So they can come in and create a new item. And they could say, for instance, pick up carrots. Now, we've also given the user the ability to type in some HTML so that if they want something to appear in bold, they can enter a bold tag. And when we display that item, we'll include the HTML that the user has given us. Unfortunately, what that would allow a malicious user to do is to inject a script tag. So now what we have is not a bold or an H1 or anything that would affect the display. We're actually putting in JavaScript code that's wrapped inside of a script tag. Now anyone who views this page is going to see a pop-up box. And you might think, well, how dangerous is a pop-up box? Any user that's going to view this to-do list is going to be executing, their browser is going to be executing this JavaScript code. And this JavaScript code could do pretty much anything it wants to. It could, for instance, take that user's cookies and post them to some third-party website. That might allow a malicious user to hijack someone's session and get access to this application. There's a number of evil things that you can do with cross-site scripting attacks. This attack could have been prevented if we had input validation turned on. So if I set validate input back to true, which is the default, and I build the project, let's come back out and refresh our application. It's recycled the app domain and I've thrown out the old to-do list. So now if I try the script attack, ASP.NET blocks that request and throws an exception. Unfortunately, it's also going to prevent the user from highlighting that they need to pick up milk. ASP.NET just sees the angle brackets for HTML and is just going to reject the request. ASP.NET is not very subtle about how it tries to detect a dangerous request. It's simply looking for markup. It's looking for less than symbols and greater than symbols. And even beyond that, if you try to turn off request validation, set validate input to false, and just try to detect script tags, people have ingenious mechanisms for working around that. So they can encode the script tag using Unicode escape sequences. And there's other ways to get JavaScript into the server without using a script tag. So you have to be very careful with this setting. If you need a library that's a little more secure, a little more extensible, we'll give you some other options. Look at downloading the Microsoft Anti-Cross-Site Scripting Library. This is designed for ASP.NET. This is a download URL that you can use to grab that library. Another security-related best practice that you should always be doing is to use HTML.encode whenever you're trying to display information inside of a view. This will also help prevent cross-site scripting attacks because it will encode any of the HTML characters that a malicious user might have gotten into your system. Since they're encoded, they're not going to be HTML that the client's browser renders. Instead, they're going to become characters that get displayed in the view. Only skip using HTML.encode when you are sure you are writing out HTML and you know that HTML came from a trusted source. This might be something you need to do if you're writing an application like a content management system where people are authoring documents using HTML and uploading them into your system. If that's the case, you're going to have to make very sure that the documents they're uploading do not contain any cross-site scripting attacks inside of them. Libraries like the anti-cross-site scripting library can help you do that.